Hi, what's up everyone, hope everything's going well. This last week we talked about some of the Rishonim. What I wanted to do is, as usual, give a few minutes summary of what we did last week. Also, I want to introduce what we're going to be doing this coming week, as well as what we're going to be doing in the next few coming weeks. So at the end I'll see what we're doing, what the next source sheet's going to be, but also talk about kind of how we're going to progress, maybe a little bit more where this is headed, so you can see the structure of what we've done generally and what we're going to do, so kind of to give the more overall structure. But to start with what we did last week, we looked at three of the main Rishonim on the Gemara, three of the main commentaries on the Gemara, all of them written about, let's say, roughly 500-600 years after the 600 years after the Gemara was written. So we spent the first Rishonim looking a little bit at the Gemara, what the Gemara does. This was introducing three of the Rishonim, again for sure Rashi, many people are familiar with, Tosfos to a certain extent, or to a large extent as well, and the Rif, maybe people are a little bit less familiar with. And the aim was to see the different approaches they have in their Perush. Again, we saw that Rashi will often clarify things in the Gemara, will clarify words, will clarify phrases, will clarify kind of the flow of the Gemara. You'll have a phrase, and Rashi will tell you, kind of fill in the extra words, like this phrase is talking about this sentence 3 lines earlier. Or Rashi will kind of help fill in the gaps and help explain and clarify. That was the first person we looked at. Next we saw Tosfos, who will bring kind of contradictions from other places. Tosfos will often ask questions and contradictions from other sugyos, and the Rif will quote those sections of the Gemara which are halacha, which are quoted, as in he will not quote the whole back and forth of Gemara. Will kind of quote the bottom line or the main sections, but not get into a whole back and forth. Those are three different approaches, and again we will probably discuss over the coming weeks. Kind of different Perushim kind of fit more. Some are more similar to Rashi, some are more similar to Tosfos, some are more similar to the Rif, and we'll be kind of using these as examples of types of Perush that are which are styles that are used by other people. However, there's one thing I wanted to point out, which I pointed out on the sheet, which also helps us kind of link together what we talked about in terms of the Gemara and how we talked about the Rishonim, namely that what the Rishonim do, you can see them as being somewhat similar to what the Gemara does to the Mishnah. Namely, the way the Gemara comments on the Mishnah, we can see certainly Rashi and Tosfos do the same thing to the Gemara. So we said in our second share that one of the things the Gemara will often do is it will clarify what does a Mishnah mean. So in the same way that Gemara does that to a Mishnah, you could say that that's what Rashi is doing to the Gemara. Similarly, we said in the first year that the Gemara will often ask contradictions from other Mishnayos. We'll look at a Mishnah and bring another Mishnah and say there's a contradiction. What the Gemara does to the Mishnayos, Tosfos does to the Gemara. He will take, rather than taking two Mishnayos, he'll take two Gemaras and say, well, they contradicted each other, and what the Gemara had done to the Mishnah, Tosfos does to the Gemara. In terms of fitting the Rif into what we had said before, we said that this is our third show, we said that one of kind of the unique or most important elements of the way the Gemara is written is that it has the kind of back and forth, what's called shakla, the give and take, the question and counter question and answer and proofs, etc. Whereas the Rif, again, just understanding where he fits into this general picture, the Rif, what is kind of unique about the Rif is that he wrote out the Gemara almost without that in. He brought that's definitely one of the important parts of his Perush, that he doesn't bring those parts, it doesn't bring the whole Shakla. So again, that's just a bonus, but I think that helps us kind of link together what we said about the Gemara and what we said about the Rishonim. Excuse me. This coming week, what we're going to do is going to look at a fourth Rishon, the Rambam, and see his style and what he kind of brings to when we learn a sugya, kind of what the Rambam's approach is. Just in terms of introducing kind of what was going to happen after that, what we've done until now is look at the Gemara and now look at some of the Rishonim and kind of look at their styles. What are they doing? What does the Gemara do? So you said the Gemara is explaining Mishnayos and asking questions and Shakla, etc. We said the Rishonim are helping us understand the Gemara. We said the different ways Rashi, Tosfos, the Rif, and we'll see the Rambam help us understand the Gemara. What we've done is, so to speak, developed an understanding of what the different parts of a sugya, again, what the different kind of texts we have, Gemara and the Rishonim, what they're trying to do. The next section we're going to get to, which is maybe a little bit more difficult, is trying to work out, well, how are we going to learn these independently? Namely, So I know if I sit down in front of a Gemara, I know the Gemara will have a list of questions and a back and forth and everything, and Rashi will clarify, and Tosfos will ask questions, and Rif will bring halacha, and the Rambam, excuse me, we'll discuss this coming week. The question then is, or what we're then going to do is go back to those same sources and work out and kind of work through a methodology or develop ways of being able to learn those, develop the skills to be able not just to know what they're doing generally, but to be able to actually be able to open, which is kind of the goal of learning, is to be able to learn independently, to be able to develop the skills. Again, it definitely takes time, but to work on developing the skills of how to read a Gemara, how to read a Rashi, how to read a Tosfos, etc. Kind of both skills, methodology, etc. So that's kind of where we're headed, just so you can have kind of the general framework. So we've started this section by giving a few shiurim, which the final one is going to be this next one on the Rambam, about the Gemara and the Rishonim, kind of just in very broad terms to know what the Gemara does, what the Rishonim do, etc. After that, we'll then discuss and focus specifically on developing the skills and the methodology for how to read independently these sources we've talked about. Hope you're enjoying everything so far. I will try to be in touch with you guys individually, just to hear how it's going, get a bit of feedback, get to know you guys a bit better, and looking forward to being in touch with you this week. Shavua Tov.